And I'm a colonel. Internal security, responsible directly to the president. Special Division 5. Any other comments, Lieutenant?
No, sir. No, ma'am.
At ease, Lieutenant.
What's up, Vault Dwellers? It's time for another installment of 80s B movies. What the hell were they smoking and where can I get some? I found 13 more movies that made me question reality itself. And today, we're going to dive into films where Kirk Douglas fights a sexually frustrated robot, farmers who turn travelers into sausage, and a dystopian future that's won through disco pop battles. I mean, the 80s weren't just wild, they were certifiably insane. And make sure to drop a comment telling us which of these beautiful disasters you've actually seen, or which one sounds crazy enough to make your watch list.
The prophecy's fulfilled, my son. The evil I've spawned will now pollute the land.
So starting us off at number 13, we have a fantasy movie made by people who heard about Lord of the Rings through 2 paper cups and a string. So we've got an elf with a machine gun crossbow, okay? And a giant who carries a tiny violin, and he's always just playing it for you. And a plot that feels like it was written by throwing D&D dice at a wall. I mean, the best part? They play everything completely normal here. I mean, when your hero's name is literally Hawk the Slayer, maybe you lean into the cheese just a little, you know? Plus, I mean, this might be the only movie where a nun is integral to a sword and sorcery plot.
Lies a distant outpost, a technologically perfect world where mistakes are impossible, because the impossible.
Number 12 brings us some major Hollywood talent with Kirk Douglas and Farrah Fawcett versus a robot with boundary issues. I mean, this thing looks like someone asked a plumber to make a Lost in Space robot, but just make it a lot hornier. The robot has a name of Hector, and it's basically what would happen if you gave the Tin Man like toxic masculinity. Meanwhile, you know, this robot becomes obsessed with Farrah Fawcett because, well, I mean, it's 80s and apparently even killer robots were not immune to Charlie's Angel's sex appeal.
You are welcome, Shad of the Akira.
Number 11 is basically Star Wars meets Seven Samurai, but with a budget of a high school drama club. The main spaceship looks like a flying health class diagram, if you know what I mean. You got Robert Vaughn basically playing his Magnificent Seven character, but this time it's in space. You got George Peppered as a space cowboy named Space Cowboy. No, really. And we got John Boy from the Waltons trying to save the universe. Plus, this was James Cameron's first major gig doing special effects. Even geniuses have to start somewhere, you know? Number 10, I want you to picture Jaws, right? But instead of a shark, picture a rubber monster that looks like someone tried to make a sea serpent from the clearance section of Hobby Lobby. The best part? This movie claims it's based on a true story from Colombia. Yeah, and I'm based on a true story about Brad Pitt, right? The whole thing plays like this nature documentary that accidentally ingested LSD. Plus, watching a monster try to be menacing while clearly being operated by someone who just learned puppetry that morning, it's pure unintentional comedy gold.
It's time you believed in a new kind of horror.
Number 9 finally provides us a movie brave enough to ask, what if we made kids creepy, but with black fingernails? So we have this school bus driver who drives through a radioactive fog, which turns all the kids into atomic zombies who kill people with hugs. I mean, that's not BS. That's the actual plot. Every parent's worst nightmare. Your kid comes home, instead of wanting to play Nintendo, they want to give you a radioactive death hug. I mean, watching these adults try to act terrified of children who look like they got into their nail polish collection, it's outrageously fun. Our friend Roger Corman's back at number 8 with a film about fish monsters that look like, the creature from the Black Lagoon's perverted cousins. These things don't just kill, they have other intentions. How this got greenlit is probably a better story than the actual movie. The practical effects they're actually decent, probably because they spent the entire budget on the monster suits and let the actors bring their own cameras to work. If you're bored on a Friday night and you are thinking you need a little bit more interspecies romance to spice up your evening, this film's actually just for you.
And then, from the back of the cave, we heard a noise, as if something was approaching. Something ominous, and it radiated a light.
Number 7 brings us an Italian knockoff of Alien that replaces face huggers with exploding eggs that look like moldy avocados. Every time someone gets near one of these things, they explode into a gore fountain that would make Golden Corral blush. The plot involves alien coffee plantations because apparently Starbucks isn't scary enough. It's a hoot watching these actors try to seem terrified of what are clearly painted foam rubber props. Plus, the alien mastermind looks like it raided a discount Halloween store. This movie is what happens when special effects teams only care about coffee and practical effects and nothing else. With number 6, I want you to imagine the Love Boat, but getting rammed by a Nazi ghost ship, and George Kennedy spending the whole movie looking like he's regretting every career choice that led him here. Well, that's Death Ship. The ship is basically a floating haunted house with a fetish for German engineering and torture devices. How do you make a cruise ship evil? Well, you add some swastikas and random footage of Hitler, apparently. The best part is watching respectable actors try to sell lines like, "The ship, it's alive," while standing next to torture devices that look like they were borrowed from Elvira's bedroom.
That was the United Galactic Network's special program live from Uranus.
At number 5, I want you to envision every science trope from the 70s, but add a Playboy model as a robot and make it look like it was filmed in someone's basement with Christmas lights. Okay? Dorothy Stratton plays an android who apparently shops at Space Disco as us. The crew is searching for something called Blue Star, which sounds like a mystical gem or some kind of really sketchy beer. The whole thing feels like someone watched Star Wars on mute while listening to disco music and said, "Yeah, I can do that." So spoiler alert, they could not in fact do that. Well, I mean, there is an alien brothel scene that looks like someone raided the clearance bin at 5 and Below, though.
Meet America's newest superhero, David Speed, Super Fuzz.
Number 4 brings us a cop who gets superpowers from a nuclear red dust, but they stop working when he sees anything red. That's not a setup for a joke. That's the actual plot. So imagine Superman, but his kryptonite is the color of a stop sign. I mean, he survives multiple execution attempts because apparently Florida's justice system is as efficient as their voting system. Terrence Hill basically plays this like a living cartoon character, which is really the only reasonable approach to a movie where traffic lights are your arch nemesis. I mean, this was actually considered serious enough to get a theatrical distribution, by the way. Number 3 graces us with Danny Elfman and his Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo making a movie. And it's exactly as insane as that sounds. I mean, I want you to imagine if someone gave John Waters acid and told him to remake Wizard of Oz. So we've got a musical number in hell, a human-sized frog butler, and just really more questionable artistic choices than whoever made that Cats movie. The whole thing looks like a drug hallucination had a baby with a carnival funhouse. Plus, I mean, it's in black and white because apparently color would have made it too normal. This isn't just a movie. It's what happens when you let theater kids run wild with cameras and zero supervision.
You may never again spend a night away from home. After you spend a night with Ida and Vincent.
It takes all kinds of critters to make Farmer Vincent's fritters. That's an actual tagline from our number 2 movie about a farmer who plants people in his garden like human vegetables and then waits for them to ripen before turning them into smoked meat. So think Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets Better Homes and Gardens. The climatic chainsaw fight has the farmer wearing a pig's head while screaming, "I'm the butcher." Yeah, that's not just dedication to character. I mean, that's someone who really commits to their small business model.
In 1994, the world is controlled by one power.
Holy mother of disco dystopias. At number 1, I want you to imagine if a mushroom watched a movie and made one of his own. So this is set in the far future year of 1994. We've got a disco musical that tells the story of future Earth, where an evil music producer literally works for the devil. People take mind-controlled disco drugs shaped like little apples, and the whole thing ends with God showing up to rapture all his hippies. So yeah, God, the actual God, he shows up in a sparkling Rolls Royce to take his hippies to space heaven. I mean, that's not even a spoiler because nothing could spoil this beautiful disaster. This movie isn't just insane, it transcends insane. I mean, it's what happens if the 70s didn't want to end and they took the 80s for hostage. From Nazi ghost ships to disco dystopians, these 13 movies prove that sometimes the best special effects is just completely losing your grip on reality. So this is Dan to remind you that in the 80s, the line between genius and insanity wasn't just thin, it was covered in glitter and probably radioactive. All right, stay radical, man.